Greetings, baby boomers, Gen Xers. You know who I am, Bernie Sanders, and do you remember how quickly you learned that if you watched Rush Limbaugh, you pretty much knew what he was going to say before the show started? Well, if you're nostalgic for that kind of predictability like I am, then hang on to your hat and enjoy the next minute and a half, because you will believe your ears when you hear what I have to say. Thing to understand here is you've heard me say everything I'm about to say. Now I'm going to say it again. Our political system has made our country weak. It used to be that there were certain things that people in the world did not do because they were afraid that America would step in, because America was the only country that could step in. That doesn't mean that the country always stepped up at the right time. It doesn't mean that they didn't let some things slide. It doesn't even mean that they backed the right horse every time. But when you look at what's happened in the world, the axis between Russia, Iran, Venezuela, I'm not counting China because it's not really part of the axis because, well, North Korea is, though. The fact is that these organizations were gaining headway in the world. The fact that so much Western media backed Hamas, yeah, they didn't say it, but they did. They didn't back Hamas. They just backed every policy that helped Hamas. You know, this was probably the last chance the world had to act. And because our politicians all had entanglements with money from these countries, both parties, by the way, this was the last chance. This was the last chance to not let these people have the world before the 21st century came to its midpoint. And this week, I'm sorry, but because of Donald Trump, I know that probably curls every nerve under your skin, and I don't like doing that to you. I don't. But I'm sorry, it's true. I am not one of his sycophants, you know that. But this was never, and Bernie Sanders is just wrong. This makes, to say the world, this doesn't just make the world safer. This stops the world from going under the influence of these powers. The Muslim Brotherhood, the Ayatollahs, the Russian Federation, and every two-bit communist dictatorship that we unfortunately took a nap after the Cold War was over too quickly because obviously there was still work to do. Obviously, the baby boomer or the pre-boomer generation was right in their so-called communist hysteria. I believe that. You know I believe that, and I just reminded you I believe that with every fiber of my being. Am I a constitutional lawyer? No. Do I actually know for sure if any laws were broken in the Constitution? No. Therefore, do I care? Fuck no. I'd rather have a Constitution in this country in 100 years. 100? Let's just try 30. Then let it become a suicide pact. Because if that axis that I'm showing on the map here solidified further, China, by the way, would have jumped into the axis the moment it was safe for it to. But China are clearly as smart as their people, and they knew, sit this one out, because they're not the powerhouse they used to be. Let me rephrase that. They're not the powerhouse that they convinced the world that they were at one time. I will let the Venezuelans speak for themselves. They've done that. You will be hard-pressed to find a Venezuelan who isn't overtly, obviously, and demonstrably paid. There's a few out there by, I forgot who that professional protest guy, not George Soros, the other guy, the younger one that lives in China, forgot his name. But those, you can actually, you know, he doesn't really try to hide it whenever he's paying for a protest. I might put a card in here with his name on it later on. My wife knows his name. Anyway, brother, you really should just sit this one out. You really should. Because calling foul on this is not going to age well. I'm not saying, yeah, I know. I know you don't like it because at the end of the day, well, then that means Donald Trump's going to come out on top on this one no matter what. There is almost nothing that could happen that could fuck this up for his legacy. He would have to actually do what you, in my opinion, I mean, this is saying in my opinion out of politeness because it's you, the paranoia that he's going to become an absolute dictator at 80-something years old. Yeah, no. I almost wish he was because I don't like Vance, and Vance looks like, because the Democratic Party is not correcting their idiotic decisions that they've made for the last 20 years plus. I'll even say 30, but it never got really bad until the 21st century. I have to assume this president will be a Republican, and that means it's going to be probably Vance, and I am not as excited about that. I'll vote for whoever else, most likely. I really don't like Vance. But I didn't like Trump before he ran, so we'll see how this unfolds. I digress. Okay, what you're doing here from the when you try to convince me to not like what just happened would be like America getting involved in. There's actually better than that in a way, because American troops are not being sent to Normandy, whatever the Venezuelan Normandy is. This is something that happened in boom, 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 3 hours done. But let me be clear, all arguments aside, Monroe Doctrine. I am a neo-McCarthyist. I made that term up for myself. Do I believe that McCarthy was right about everything? No. Do I believe his method was completely right? No. The man was acting on impulse. He didn't have time to think a lot of things through, and he just did whatever he felt was going to be effective at the time. But when you put that aside, on the whole, yeah, McCarthy was right. McCarthy was right, and we should have been the country. The Red Scare was not scary enough. Was not treated like something scary enough. And the Red Scare, the Red Menace morphed into what we have going on that we're battling now. And I count our lucky stars that it turned out so far to be this easy to grapple with, because I never thought that this much could possibly be accomplished in 2 years. When Trump said, I'll do it in 3 days, I rolled my eyes like everybody else. And he didn't. I didn't think that he would get this much done in 1 year. I said 2 years a minute ago. It's not been 2 years. It's been 1. You're never going to get me to lament this. This would be like Hitler and Mussolini. All, getting crushed, and some saying, aren't you concerned about the Monroe Doctrine? Here in the expansionism and imperialism. No, I think imperialism is great. Okay, better us imperialists than Hitler. Okay, that's what I would have said. Better us be the imperialist than Hezbollah. Better us, well, not Hezbollah. Sorry, the empire was the Ayatollah. But then again, sure, but one could argue that the empire was centralized in Russia. Or who knows what these two powers would have done once they both accomplished their dream. But it would have made the world a hellscape, and I am very happy to see that it looks like we've avoided it. I'm sorry.